we can tell you a bit about why we gathered today. Um, and I think the main reason is that the world is changing, right? I think I think we can all agree with the idea that so many things are changing around us, both as L&D professionals and as learning experience designers as well. And I talk very often to other L&Ds, and the one of the questions that we get is, okay, but in what ways? Like, what are the things that we should be looking at? What are the signals, the trends, the things that we should be expecting from now on in our industry? And we've a couple of months back, after years of following Srishti and Harsh, we partnered up to explore a bit more this idea of the future of learning experience design, how we should prepare ourselves, but also how to stand out. Because I remember when I joined L&D a few years back. I won't tell you how many, because you'll know how old I am then. But a few years back, if you would ask someone about learning experience design, it wouldn't be such a common concept. But I feel as time went by, more and more people started learning about learning experience design, adopting this, I would even say, identity of learning experience designer. And yeah, we should find ways to stand out in sometimes a very crowded market. So this is the main topic that we're going to explore today. And without further ado, Srishti, the mic is yours. The digital mic is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, so I'm going to jump into it. We have a tight 40-minute slot left, and I want to make sure that we're able to power pack these 40 minutes into a lot of learning, a lot of discussion and conversation. One request before we start: if there are more people that can switch on video so that I don't just see names and now animals on my screen. I see a unicorn there, which is very distracting. But yeah, nice to see some familiar, some old faces. Hi, Shashank. Okay, so today we're going to talk a little bit about how to stand out as an LxD. And before, just in terms of what to expect, we're going to start by talking about the what and the why. Like, what does standing out mean, and why do we need to do that? We'll spend a large chunk of today's session actually focusing on the how. So we're going to discuss about 5 tips on how you can stand out. And then there is another small section at the end, which is more on, okay, what can you do in the next couple of weeks, right? So three parts to the next 40 minutes that we have. And before I get to answering this question, I'd love to hear from the group. So feel free to type in the chat, or if you have a lot to share, maybe we can hear from 1 or 2 people if you want to raise your hands. What do you think makes a learning experience designer stand out? Being user-centric, says Manikandan. Okay. Knowledge about how the brain works. Okay. Learning that sticks. Being creative. Okay. What else? What makes LxD stand out? Energy, authenticity. I love that second word, Martina. Adaptive facilitation. Okay. Being with trends. Personal learning philosophy. Okay. What else? What makes somebody stand out as a learning experience designer? Empathy. Bringing all of you into what you create. Personal experience, interactive, well-reflected learning time, applicability, taking care of all the tenets, learn, apply, having a relevant outcome in mind and not the output, okay? Making people also feel and connect. Okay, what else? Okay, some very, very interesting, interesting response. And I'm going to hold on to some of these thoughts as we kind of unpack and peel this onion further. So I think fundamentally, being able to stand out requires an understanding of what the baseline is, right? You can't stand, if everything is the same, then nothing will stand out, right? So this first section around the what and the why is actually us trying to understand what is the baseline today in this world before we get into how do you stand out in that, right? Again, a quick type in the chat. What is your current role or designation? Like, what is the title that you have? Learning coordinator, says Carla. L&D specialist, organizational development specialist. Jack of all trades, master on. Oh, wow. I would love to see that on somebody's LinkedIn. Learning operations program coordinator, team manager, social sector consultant, trainer, mentor, entrepreneur, learning experience designer, L&D manager, LxD, knowledge manager, learning specialist. So there are like a whole bunch of very different roles, designation, titles. It goes beyond the zoo, beyond the animals that we identify as. But even our titles are so widely different, right? From entrepreneur to coordinator, learning coordinator, and so many more. So we come in all shapes and sizes, right? In a nutshell, and a few common ones. I'm sure like a bunch of these have already been covered in the chat, but we also have people that might call themselves curriculum designers or content developers or teachers or learning engineers, right? There are different names that often the same role is being termed as, right? There are also some different things that we all do in our work. So that part, there is a lot of overlap there, I would imagine. So we do talk to learners, we analyze data, we facilitate sessions, conduct assessments, design, upload content, evaluate tools, understand the subject matter, design experiences, and we do so many more things, right? What's happening today is that tech has moved so fast that it's fundamentally changing the way that we live, work, and learn. And the kind of things that we're going to see in the next 20 years is more change than we've seen probably in the last century, right? And this change is sort of forms the very crux of why a lot of us are in this identity crisis almost, right? Of, okay, who am I? What do I do? Like, is this my job? Am I supposed to like, is this also something I need to learn? Like, is AI the new thing? What's coming next, right? So there are all these questions that I think all of us kind of like struggle to answer. And in all of this, I think we've observed that there are three key shifts that have happened in the LxD landscape. And we're going to talk a little bit about like before and after, right? So the first one is that we have moved from being content specialists to context specialists, right? With AI, producing content and products is like democratized to a different level. Like it takes very little time, very little effort and money than what it did even like 5 years back, right? So the question has now shifted to what outcomes is that content actually driving? So time, energy, and resources are now being focused more towards being able to identify the problem, understand the context, and being able to really diagnose it better. So the focus that was earlier on being able to prototype and develop something where a lot of time would be spent on articulate or being able to curate knowledge and resources is now being spent on being able to understand the context really well. So what is the problem that we're trying to solve? And how do you kind of understand learners better? How do you understand that problem in that context better? So the way that we're spending time is changing. So that's kind of one big shift that we've observed. The second big shift that we've observed is we've moved from choices and abundance almost of like having multiple options to being more action first. So with information and knowledge now accessible at the click of a button, the focus now is more on how do we actually reduce that cognitive load? How do we reduce options? How do we reduce decision making? So from what was earlier, like how do we give as many options and give people exposure and be almost like divergent, and are able to simplify the what and why, that is now being changed to focusing on the how. So how do you actually drive change, drive long-term impact, drive those outcomes, and how do you make it very rooted in action is what kind of the second change is all about. So being able to understand cognition, being able to understand emotions, neuroscience, building systems that are more focused on accountability, discipline, motivation, yeah, and goal-oriented learning, right, as Rajat rightly said in the chat. So that's kind of the second big shift that's happening, from like having abundant choices to being very focused, laser-sharp action. And the third one is kind of this shift from single-player learning or games to like multiplayer learning or games. So we are hyper connected, but the irony of it is that people are feeling more lonely and feeling like this lack of community more than ever, right? So the focus for like learning spaces or environments that we create is also to be able to like drive social connections, drive that sense of belonging and that sense of community. So things like body doubling or being able to like co-work or interest-based communities are becoming like such a big norm. And that's leading to kind of shift what LxDs do from like acquiring knowledge and like compliance related, which is more like individual and focused on self, to being more like emergent, co-creative, which is far more immersive and far more community led. Yeah, and as Lavinia said, connection over content, right? So whereas MOOCs and self-paced courses were the norm, now a lot of that has kind of shifted to the way that the world is learning today, and that's kind of changing the way that we design those experiences as well. So that kind of is the baseline. So those are three big shifts that we've seen. I think the question that maybe all of you are sitting with right now is, what can I do? Like I, as an individual that's kind of here on this call, what do I do about this? And how do I decide like what to focus on? Which is what we'll kind of jump into next. And we've kind of make it super actionable. We are following the trend as well, being more action first and goal oriented. So 5 tips to stand out as an LxD. There are 55 days that are left for the new year. And I don't know about the rest of you. November, December for me is very reflective and introspective. I kind of get into a different state of mind. And I think the idea for this session was to kind of figure out things that you can potentially action in the next 55 days as well, right? So we're not here to make like big goals. We're here to make small goals that actually work. So the 5 tips are hopefully things that you can start doing starting tomorrow and continue doing, so that in the next year it can actually drive that outcome. Okay, the first one, right? A quick show of hands. How many of you have studied learning or education, anything related to that in college? So you have a degree, you've done a PhD. Quick show of hands. I see some hands. Diana, Vashisht, Karen. Feel free to raise the hand on Zoom also. Martina. Okay, that's like, I think 3 people out of the 42. Christina, 4. Okay, so that's 4 just on this call. That's about 4 or 5 people on a call of 42, right? A very, very small percentage. Myself, I've also not studied learning or education in college. I studied design, which is quite different. And I'm going to kind of get into a little bit of a story here, right? The year is 2020. We're kind of just about, the pandemic has started. We don't know what the world, what's happening with the world. And in the middle of all of this, I have decided to make a career switch. So I've studied product design. at that time, I was working as a user researcher, and I have decided to now become a learning experience designer and join a company where that was my title. Shashank, who's on this call, was there on the team with me then. And I was kind of surrounded by people who were like PhDs, or had studied learning, had been working in the learning space for decades. And I find myself with a whole lot of imposter syndrome, right? So I would be on calls and I would be like, what are they talking about? Can somebody like explain this to me in English? And it was almost like they were trying to they were talking in a different language. And as somebody who was just kind of making this transition into like LxD and this world, it came with a lot of imposter syndrome that can I really be here? And any guesses on what I did to kind of tackle this? I mean, I'm still here as a learning experience designer, so something worked. Any guesses on what I did to tackle it? No. Come on, let's hear it in the chat if there are any guesses. Found a mentor, says Christina. Okay. Read everything I could put my hands on, Googled it, got a mentor, asked a lot of questions, spoke to more people. Took a few deep breaths, yes. More than a few. Bring your strengths from the design world in this. Okay, yeah, I think a bunch of you like got it right. I did a lot of like the deep breaths and all of that as well. But I just read a lot, right? So any new term I would hear, I would make a note of it and I would go back and like make sure that I know what it is the next day. Or any new project that I was on, I would make sure that I would like Google as much as possible, try to understand that context a little bit better. And slowly, as the months passed, I found like that imposter syndrome like growing a lot lesser, and me being able to understand all conversations that were happening around me, right? Which at that point like was a big win. So that's kind of the first tip, right? Which is that knowledge precedes skill. In order for us to actually be able to make a difference and apply something, we need some fundamental knowledge that we can play with. So it's like you learn the rules before you break them. Now, for LxDs, there are 4 large buckets of knowledge that I think all of us need to know. The first one is understanding humans, right? So I remember somebody pointed this out as something that makes LxD stand out. So understanding of neuroscience, being able to actually interact, engage with users, understand what's going on in their head, having an understanding of learning sciences, amongst many other things, is this first bucket of knowledge that we need as LxDs. The second bucket of knowledge is being able to understand culture. All of us are embedded inside organizations, inside institutes, all of which have their own culture, right? So to be able to understand and navigate that complexity, being able to understand social cultural nuances and that context better is the second kind of knowledge that we need to learn. The third one is around understanding experiences. So, you understand the human, you understand culture. How do you actually now create that experience at the end of the day? So things like facilitation, technology, content, all of the things that are building blocks of an experience. What are things that you need to learn before you can actually execute those? And the last one is understanding the subject matter that we're working with, right? Some basic level of understanding, whether you're developing leadership courses or courses on management or math or science, whatever that might be, there is some base level of knowledge that you need before you can start like building on top of that, right? And now there are different ways to acquire that knowledge. And the way that I like to put this is like almost put like an effort versus impact 2 by 2, right? The easiest way to start is that, okay, I'll listen to a video. Let me get a hold of that podcast, or let me find a book. And while that's great to get introduced to a topic, it's also low effort and low impact, right? So the amount that it will truly be able to help you to actually like act on that will be low as well. conversations, mentorship, like a bunch of you mentioned, or like writing and posting on social media is still a little low on the effort side, but the impact is much higher, right? So you're actually building things, you're actually creating knowledge and sharing that. So that's kind of another one. And projects, courses, degrees, workshops is like high impact and high effort as well. Now, it's not like one of these is better than the other. Depending on what you're trying to learn, you might have to pick a bouquet of what you see on the screen right now. So the idea is to kind of figure out what works best for you in that, for that topic and for that context. So that's kind of the first bit around like how do you build knowledge and focus on that. Coming to the second tip now. Again, a quick, I want everybody to put a number in the chat. How many like learning experience designers do you know that you can reach out to? So if you have a question, you're stuck somewhere, you know that they will respond back. This is not a cold DM. I'm saying like, these are people that you can talk to, reach out to for help. I see some numbers in the chat. 2, 1, 2, 2, 1, about 3, 4, 1, 3, 4, 0, 3 to 5, 3, but there are a lot of communities for help. Okay, 0, 328 via offbeat. Okay, that's oddly specific. None after this. So after this workshop, hope at least one. Okay. Okay. So when I started, like in 2019 or even before, I was a learning experience designer. My number was 0. And today that number is closer to 100. And the reason that that number was able to grow like exponentially over the last 4 years was because of a whole lot of communities that I was a part of. So Offbeat being one, L&D Shakers, Transcend Network, LxD Lab, amongst many other. The second one was through events, like online events, like somebody mentioned that they're on this call and hoping for one connection. There were a whole bunch of events that I've attended over the last 4 years, and a lot of them have breakout rooms and get a chance to like meet new people. And the third one is like more volunteer community-led projects. So the L&D strategy blueprint by L&D Shakers is one. The Motivation Matters handbook by LxD Lab is another one project where I've actually got a chance to collaborate with other learning experience designers and work with them in some shape or form. And all of these like communities, events, projects led me to a lot of talking with a lot of people. I think I remember Lavinia and I got on a very random call a couple of years back, and here we are like so many years later, right? So whether it's like reaching out to people that you're in breakout rooms with, sending LinkedIn requests, sending cold DMs, I think a lot of those conversations are what has made that number grow from a 0 to 100, right? So the second tip is exactly around that. Build your tribe. Whatever your number was in the chat, figure out how you can add to that, right? Can you talk to one new person like every week? Just do a cold DM. Maybe they reply and you make a new friend. Maybe they don't. It's okay. Right. I say you need to find your LxD soulmates. Surround yourself with a community, right? You need peers, people that are like kind of in a similar place as you, people that you can learn along with. You also need mentors, people that are a little ahead in their journey that you can learn from, right? So whose mistakes you can probably learn from. You also need experts, right? Who know what they're doing, and you can actually learn from their experience, from their wealth of knowledge, right? So you need different kinds of people in your tribe. You don't just need experts, you don't just need peers. Make sure you have a well-balanced tribe. And there are different ways to interact with your tribe, right? So you can do monthly check-ins. A couple of years back, I had set up a personal board of directors, a group of 3-4 people that I would jump on a call with every quarter. You can do SOS calls that, hey, I'm stuck here. I need some brainstorming help. Can you help here? Feedback conversations like, hey, I'm doing a session. Can you come and observe? And can you give me feedback on what could be better? Skill share clubs, mentoring, coaching calls, or even like structured courses, workshops, or communities. So there are different ways to interact, and I'm sure I've definitely missed a lot. But figure out what works for you, and build that tribe. The third tip is a fill in the blanks to begin with, which is a great hack to learn is to dash, and it's a 5-letter word. Teach, says Nancy. Do, unlearn. Okay, five letters. Share. Yeah, Joanna, you're absolutely right. So I mean, the reason I would imagine teaching is one way to share, which is why it's not teach, it's actually share, and I'll kind of unpack this a little bit further. This is a picture from college. We used to have these huge pinup boards that I would like cover and make sure that whatever work I was doing was visible up front. And I had purely selfish reasons for that. It's because it would spark conversations with people. So people would come, look at that board and be like, hey, what are you doing? And I would get a chance to talk to somebody that I would otherwise not have a conversation with. And it led to some pretty interesting ideas. So that's one way of sharing. Another way of sharing is through a blog, right? Or to use kind of social media in whatever shape or form, or even to do like a session, an event, workshop, and actually engage people. Since 2020, and these numbers, some of these numbers are like ballpark. I've probably spoken to more than 150 different people, written more than 100 articles, have done definitely over 50 illustrations and different events, workshops, and that number would be over 40, right? And all of this has led to me learning and me being able to grow into the designer that I am today. And if there is one hack that has contributed to me, to my practice, it is this, which is share to learn, right? Crystallize your thoughts, even if they are messy, they are unfinished, you're not confident about them. Form an opinion, good, bad, ugly, and tell the world, right? I've had people who've commented on my articles and said that, hey, this doesn't make sense to me because XYZ. And that has given me a different perspective to look at the same thing. So it's more about how do you kind of share and learn. So whether it's experiences, stories, recommendations, tips, insights, case studies, previous work that you've done, take your pick. And feel free to like stick to social media, online, offline, workshops, events, books, articles, whatever it is. This is almost like a interesting mix and match activity to see like what are things that come out that kind of resonate with you. So share ruthlessly and shamelessly, to like kind of learn. The fourth tip is unscramble the word. So a great way to build taste, and we're going to talk a little bit about taste, is anybody that wants to
exposure.
Exposure. Okay, yes, that's right, Swami. That was really fast. Yeah, so I fundamentally believe that all the experiences that I build are either inspired from or remixes of other experiences that I have been a part of, right? And whether that's a spinning class, or a pottery lesson, or a museum visit, or a swimming lesson in a pond, or a running club, right? All the things that I do outside of work are what help me at work the most, right? So there are different things that I've taken from how a 45-minute spinning session is structured. Like how do you start, keep up the momentum and end a session, right? There's great learning there. and there are so many other things that we do outside of work that can add immensely to the work that we do. But I love this visual, right? It's something I found on the internet. Our mind is for having ideas and not for holding them, right? So it's great to have exposure, to kind of have these experiences, but it's not worth anything if we can't remember it and we can't recall it. And I just want to share one way in which I have tried to capture this. So this is a screenshot from like my Notion diary on this course that I attended called Nervous System Mastery. What you see here is like all my notes. So every session I would kind of parallelly like take notes on how did they do the intro. This was like a breathing exercise. What was the activity in breakout rooms? And, try to take notes along the way. And I've done this religiously for every single course I have done in the last 4 years at least. And what that gives me is an amazing repository of like icebreakers, of visual ideas, of things that I can keep going back to. So the fact that this exists and I know how to find this information is what makes the exposure worth it, right? So exposure without like retrieval is kind of pointless. And that's kind of the fourth tip, right? Which is expose yourself, capture it, and make sure you're able to retrieve that inspiration, right? You know where to find something. And again, exposure can take many shapes and forms. You can observe experiences, people, things that are out there. You can listen to podcasts, things, new ideas, things that people are doing. You can immerse yourself, not just in workshops and experiences, but also the world in general. And you can engage in ideas, opinions, theories, right? Whether that's through reading or through conversations at different shapes and forms. But on capturing, we have another like 2x2, which is how do we make retrieval easy? And that's the green flag, right? That's what you should focus on. Capturing, if you say that, okay, I want capturing to be easy, you can figure out like an easier way to do that. Just some ways. I use Notion and that system works for me, but I know different people have different ways to kind of capture and retrieve these ideas. So whatever that might be, figure out a way to kind of retrieve that information upfront. And the last tip, anybody wants to guess on what this could be? Okay, somebody said this at the beginning, but like fill in the blanks again. A good LxD is a jack of dash trades and a master of dash. Jack of many trades and a master of some, okay? Jack of all trades and a master of none, okay? All and none. Jack of no trades and a master of all. Okay. It feels like people are trying all combinations now. 1 and 1. All and learning. Okay. There is a twist coming. I didn't think this was the twist, but it seems like it might be. Okay, so a good LxD in my books is a jack of all trades and a master of at least one, right? And I'll kind of unpack this in the next few slides. If I look at my own practice, I feel like the 3 things that I do really well. The first one is like research. A lot of my career at the beginning was spent doing this, and I think even now as a learning experience designer, it adds a lot of value to the work that I do, being able to understand different contexts and design for them. The second one is like facilitation. So being able to like facilitate experiences of different kinds. And the last one would be content, right? So writing, visualizing, and being able to like put together content. That's something that I feel like I'm really good at. So for me, those are the 3 skills that I feel like I have mastered. But everything else that it takes, all that long list that we saw before, from assessments to analytics to all other things are things that I can do reasonably well, right? And that's what I mean by saying jack of all trades and master of at least one. So tip number 5 is to actually pick a niche. Do not be a generalist. Pick a niche. Trying to be everything to everyone is a recipe for mediocrity. And you can layer those niches over time. Right now it's one. It might seem like a big step. But over time, you'll realize that, okay, there are 2, 3 things that you're potentially like good at. And just to kind of simplify this further, your niche could be a problem area. So say you're the best person to develop programs on leadership or maths or skill building. So you can pick a problem area as your niche. You could also pick a part of the process as your niche. So say that you are the person for analytics, you are the person for research, right? That could be another niche that you pick. Or you could pick a pedagogy. You are the best at gamification, or your niche is actually project-based learning. Or it could also be people or an audience. So whether that's adult learners or corporate people that work in tech, early childhood, whatever. Maybe a person is like, or an audience is what you pick as your niche. It can be different for different people. So in a nutshell, the 5 tips that can help you are knowledge precedes skill. So focus on like knowledge building, build your tribe, share to learn, expose yourself and actually capture that, have a system for being able to capture and retrieve that, and pick a niche. Now, a lot of courses, as we were talking, a lot of courses are focused on the craft of learning design, right? So a lot of people will talk about, okay, how do you do articulate better, or how do you do assessments better? There are a bunch of courses that exist out there, right? So just like a few that I found quickly. So you have like, how do you design and facilitate, how like learning experience design. There's one on like Storyline 360. This is more on like peer, like focusing on collective learning and peer-based. But in order to truly stand out as a learning experience designer, you need more than just craft, right? If I were to just bring back these 5 tips, craft is one part of it, but there are so many other things that it takes to truly stand out as a learning experience designer. And we've kind of built a course for just that. So which is not focused on the craft, right? We know that there is enough and more out there to help you get better at your craft. But what about the other parts? And along with Offbeat, we have a course called by the same name, which is Stand Out as a Learning Experience Designer. If Lavinia, you can put the link in the chat. It's a 2-week course that starts in about 10 days, a little over 10 days. Which focuses on LEAD. The larger framework is learn, evaluate, aspire, design. So we go from understanding the fundamentals of learning experience design. What does it take to be a designer today? A little bit we spoke about at the beginning of today's session as well. We do an evaluation where you'll assess your skills and your growth areas. You set a North Star for 2025. So we'll be very focused. This probably, if you're on this course, this probably be the last time you're learning this year. We'll make it count. So you set a North Star for 2025. What do you want to do next year? And you create a personalized action plan for that. So we have 4 sessions over 2 weeks. More details you can find on the link as well. This course will not change your life. So there's no promises there. Only you can do that. But what it can help you with is to kind of build a better path and navigate your career, right? So that's something we can definitely help you with. And with that, I will kind of wrap up, and we have a few minutes for questions if there are any. Lavinia, Harsh, Ivana, if you want to add anything while people are thinking of questions, please do.
Yes, just wanted to add, because one of the questions that we've got about a program was, okay, this is a 2 weeks program. I will create like one of the outputs of the program will be creating this plan. How are you gonna support me afterwards? And the program also comes with the Offbeat Fellowship where you can find also sorts of resources that you can match to whatever plan you create for yourself, and also, finding your tribe, as you said. So yeah, that's one way while people are thinking about questions.
There's one more question, Lavinia. Maybe you want to take that from Rajat.
Yes. Oh, sorry. I was thinking of replying in writing, but yes, we do not deliver at the moment train the trainer for offline trainers. Actually, we do for offline trainers, but it's online. So the program at the moment is only online. It's called Non-Boring Facilitation. If you would be so kind as to drop it here. It's not train the trainer, but maybe train the facilitator, I would say. It does cover both the online and the offline context, but it's not offline, especially.